Well, hi everyone. My name is Alyssa, she, her pronouns, and I am the Presence Collective coordinator. On behalf of Presence Collective, we've been doing these webinars every single Thursday, 2 p.m. PST. And today we have two guest teachers. We have Dr. Sará King and Rasheed Hughes. So Dr. Sará King is a UCLA trained political and learning scientist, neuroscientist, social entrepreneur, public speaker, and yoga and meditation instructor. She has over 20 years of experience as a research scientist and specializes in the study of the relationship between mindfulness, community healing, medicine, and social justice. She is also the founder of MindHeart Consulting, offering up workshops, seminars, and evidence-based research projects based on the framework she developed called the Science of Social Justice. Rasheed Hughes is a proud graduate of the Howard University Department of Music and the Howard University School of Divinity. Rasheed is a certified mindfulness and yoga teacher and a restorative justice specialist in Washington, D.C. In 2019, Rasheed co-founded the Heart Refuge mindfulness community, a mindfulness community in Washington, D.C. that is dedicated to inspiring people of color to live with love and courage. So a warm welcome to these two right here, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for your donations. Your donations make it possible for us to stay alive. And your presence means everything. So, Rasheed, Sará.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Alyssa. And thank you everyone for gathering together in beloved community with Rasheed and I today. I'm just so excited about this event. Rasheed and I are truly a brother and sister in the Dharma. And this is our first time teaching together, and it's long awaited. So I just wanted to put that out there, that my heart is just like swelling with love in this moment. And so what I wanted to do is introduce to you all a little bit about what our flow is going to be for the day. And then as soon as I'm finished with that, I'm going to guide us into a brief moment of mindfulness so that we can get settled inside of our bodies. So Rasheed is going to start us out with the story of how he developed the framework of aggression masquerading as compassion. Then I'll be reflecting on that with comments that are related to my own lived experience of this phenomenon. Afterwards, Rasheed will be leading us in some guided embodied practice so that we can really get into the felt and lived experience of what this all means, how it deeply resonates with all of us and our spiritual paths. I will be continuing to lead a segment of practice after that. And then after I'm finished leading us in the embodied practice, we will be opening up this space for all of you to share whatever your reflections are. But in particular, we would love to encourage you to share how it is that you are experiencing what it is that we are speaking about, and how this relates to your embodied practice around supporting the work of racial justice. And so with that, come into whatever is the most comfortable position that is going to be most supportive of your practice right now. So for some of you, that's going to be taking a seated position. For others of you, that may involve lying down or standing up, whatever feels most compassionate and accessible to you today. And perhaps we can all take 3 deep breaths in and out of the nostrils if those are accessible to you today. And as you're taking those 3 deep, hopefully grounding breaths, really coming into your embodied awareness using the door of the breath. Some of you may have your hands on your lap or your eyes halfway closed, or perhaps fully close. And if you're feeling in the need for additional support, you maybe want to place one hand on the heart and the other on the belly, really intentionally linking together the center of the seat of our intuitive knowing and our ability to manifest love and embody love in this world. And returning to your natural rhythm of breath, sending your attention and awareness to the feet and how they're connecting with the earth. Perhaps noticing if there's a difference between the way that one foot is landing on the earth and the other. Simply noticing. And then calling your intention and awareness to the muscles of the belly. And if it feels compassionate and accessible to you, perhaps noticing if you have been clenching or holding the belly tight to the spine. Are you able to offer up some relaxation to the belly as a means of intentionally dropping your defenses? And then lastly, calling your awareness and attention to the muscles of the shoulders. Is one higher than the other? Noticing the impact that is had on the entire body when perhaps we're able to offer a bit of relaxation to the shoulders, which they say carry the shoulds that we project onto ourselves in this life. Let's take one more collective deep inhale and exhale together, taking note of the entire body. And perhaps as you are taking note, maybe you'd like to set an intention for how it is that you're showing up in our session today. What is alive for you? What are you present to that is in need of healing, revealing, opening up to tenderness and compassion? And if you have the hands on your heart and on the belly, relaxing them down onto the lap and beginning to very, very gently open up the eyes without staring at your computer monitor and allowing colors and textures to flood into your awareness. I wanted to say a little bit of something before Rasheed begins. So this phrase, aggression masquerading as compassion, comes from a dharma talk that my brother Sheed gave, and he uploaded it onto SoundCloud. Alyssa is going to be putting that original dharma talk into the chat for you all to access at your leisure. But I just have to say that even though this dharma talk was only like 8 or 9 minutes long, it completely transformed me and my life in terms of the awareness that I hold over the colonization process which I have endured in my embodiment as a Black woman, and the true power of vulnerability and tapping into authentic compassion, which is based on the dismantling of white supremacy inside of myself and my heart, body, and mind. And I'm just so excited to have the opportunity to begin to explore this with you all today.
So peace, everybody. So happy to be here with you all today. And thank you, Alyssa, for the introductions, and Sarah for the wonderful grounding practice. So aggression masquerading as compassion. Yeah, so this was actually an inquiry that I was holding for a while, and I have still been holding for a while before I gave that talk. And this inquiry really was around exploring why is it difficult for me to fall apart at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what prevents me from being able to actually step into feelings of discomfort, and to also um, actually be honest and acknowledge um, being vulnerable, and actually being uncomfortable with being vulnerable. So one thing that I begin to inquire into is, what does aggression feel like in my body? And what does compassion feel like in my body? And I'm still rubbing my heart right now because I'm nervous. So in order to stay close to it, I have to keep a hand, and just so I can have some contact. But yeah, so the inquiry is, what does this feel like in my body? Not intellectualizing it, not being able to have just conversation about it, but actually noticing how it impacts my body, and how that impacts how I relate to myself in the present moment. And that's the beautiful thing about mindfulness, because mindfulness connects us. This aware space, this presence that illuminates what's happening in the present moment, and that includes our responses and how we engage with what's alive for us. So I really begin to actually have some tangible kind of like material to work with when, sorry, it's an airplane, tangible material to be able to work with during my yoga practice. And it was during my yoga practice where I noticed this subtle energy of aggression gradually creeping in and out of my practice. And when I say creeping in and out of my practice, I really, just to be honest, I really just noticed that I wouldn't allow myself to fall. Like, even if I was talking to Sarah earlier this week, I'm like, yo, this happens when I'm in my room by myself. Not just like when I'm in a studio, but like when I'm by myself, there's this this need to brace myself from being vulnerable in the present moment. And it's all connected to this image of, Rasheed, I have to have it together always. I have to have it together. I can't be seen not having it together. So the question that I've kind of been working with recently is, why is it difficult for me to not be in control? Why is it difficult for me to not always be able to be in control? Mm-hmm. So when I think about aggression, and I feel aggression as it arises in my body, even still in the present moment, to try to push away sensations of vibrating sensations in my chest area, and the fluttering in my stomach. Um, I really just noticed that it's rooted around wanting to be seen in a certain light, rather than allowing the light of awareness to just illuminate what's present. Right? So compassion for me is really the container and the quality of my attention when I encounter this feeling of needing to control arising in my experience. So it's kind of like, okay, I touch into the need to control and to brace myself. And the compassion comes in and says, it's okay, you don't have to do that, you can fall. Mm.
Mm. Mm. If I may, Rasheed,
Of course.
um, what I'm really tuning into and resonating with about the quality of what you're communicating in my own experience is what it means to truly surrender. And I'd like to point out and name that we do not live in a society that makes it safe, particularly for people from Black, Indigenous, people of color, for the marginalized, to surrender fully. Indeed, it seems to me as though the historical existence of the structures of systemic oppression and white supremacy make it such that I have never had a single conversation with any Black person in my life, and I wonder what your experience is of this, where we are able to simply be in the world, going about our day, walking down the street, entering into different places and spaces, our job, the coffee shop, the grocery store, an elevator, without this electricity that surrounds us and says, caution, control yourself, control your body, control the narrative around your body. Be sure that in your mannerisms and in your moving through the world that you are indicating a degree of safety and comfort for the people who are in power and privilege around you, because without us very carefully going through all of these deeply embodied and cellular manipulations, there's a very real threat that we could be imprisoned or killed without leaning into these embodied structures of control. I had a friend, a dear colleague of mine, who is a tall, large African-American gentleman, on a call the other day say that every time he gets into an elevator with white people, he's very certain where he places his body and how he is emoting, particularly if he is alone in an elevator with a white woman. He said, I am certain to get all the way into the corner, and I am certain to try and give off a certain air of, you don't have to be afraid of me. I'm not a threat. But for him, there was also this sense that there was nothing that he could do in terms of manipulating and controlling his body language that would ultimately spare his life. And I kind of wonder if you have any reflections on that.
Absolutely. Um, mm. So what immediately arises for me is just reflecting on what it's like to be in a Black male body entering into a white dominated yoga studio. It's just something that's pretty tangible, pretty consistent across the board. And just noticing simple things like, okay, when I sit next to certain white people, why they slide over more, or if it's not a lot of space, left, why is it that usually it's a person of color that makes room for me rather than a white person? Or when I go to these studios, why is it that I have to answer tons of questions about where I'm from, how did I hear about the studio, like where do I work, and all of these other things that can contribute to me actually not being able to really enter into the studio um, to work on my practice. And one thing that I've noticed is that I always ask myself is, how come I really don't see people like falling or stumbling in yoga studios? Like outside of like when you're doing a headstand or something. But how come I really don't hear moaning and groaning and the tears and the shits and fucks? Like how come none of that is happening when we're actually working with the heart? And that's really interesting for me because um, you know whether it's meditation or yoga, like it's a heart practice. So if it's a heart practice and we're human and we're living in this world, it's likely that at some point there's at least going to be a ouch or something like that. And for me, just coming back to the aggression and the compassion, the compassion says it's okay to say ouch. It's room for that. It's room here in the presence of awareness to actually say out, to say this hurts, to need to sit down and take a break, and that does not negate my innate wholeness or my goodness at all. So this is really what the dynamic that I'm really reflecting on when I talk about aggression and compassion, like really becoming a little more clear with um, feeling the body contract and knowing what spaciousness feels like in the body.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. If I may piggyback for a moment, and then we can actually begin to segue into the embodied practice that we'd like to experience here today. I have two reflections that I'd like to share based off of what you said. I think that what you are talking about in terms of this phenomenon that you have experienced inside of yoga studios is altogether pervasive throughout our society. And indeed, I am seeing that it is informing some of the current response in our society to the recent explosion of visibility that the murder of unarmed Black people within our community is suddenly receiving. I am noticing a certain reactivity, right? A reactivity that is in some circles being articulated as, oh, this is our compassionate arising to meet with the moment. But there's something aggressive about it. There's something aggressive about the relational space. And I, at times, really question some of the authenticity of the movement that is arising. I mean, we need this movement to arise, but not out of a reactive place. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. There are no quick and easy and fast solutions to 400 years of perpetual slavery, enslavement, mental enslavement, spiritual enslavement, right? And so, whereas I appreciate and have deep gratitude for all of the calls of action, I think that there is another something that I picked up on from your Dharma talk and the way that you were pivoting around the need to rest and how profound the very idea of people of color, Black people, being able to rest is so fundamental to our experience of social justice as well-being.
Yeah.
And so we are not in a rush, but we are in this process. And it's the being in the process and the allowing of the messiness and the ouch of it all, the not turning away, that I think I'm hearing is truly going to be fundamental to a healing path forward.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. One more thing that I'll add, and I know we got to continue on. The reason that I stress importance of rest is because rest is fundamental to who and what we are. Our awareness, its natural way of being is rest. So that's more inherent to who we are than the aggression. The aggression is secondary. So I highlight the rest because it's an invitation for us to remember who we are. So when we don't have the privilege to rest, it's actually um, a threat, and it's actually it's just it's very heartbreaking because it's something that we should not have to deserve or earn because it's so true and essential to who we are. Yeah. Mm. So should we go into a guided practice? All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's going to be kind of a two-part practice. Uh, where I'm going to start off where we're gonna work through tension in the body for about 15 minutes, and then well, maybe a little less than 15 minutes, maybe
Like 10.
10.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then Sarah will come in as well. So you will hear two voices. Okay. And as always, I encourage you that to take the words that I use as invitations. If at any point the guidance that I'm giving doesn't fit well to your body, please take the agency to choose how you would like to continue the practice. Okay. So I'll start off by inviting 3 sounds of the bell. So just beginning to find a posture that works for your body, feels okay to you. And this posture can be lying down, standing, sitting, really just sensing into your body and seeing what do you need? What posture do you need in this moment? And just now turning your mind towards something that you're grateful for. It can be simply just the fact that you're breathing, Can be that you were able to wake up this morning, just something, someone that you're grateful for. And just allowing your attention to rest in this feeling of gratitude. Maybe bringing a slight smile to the face may help to make this feeling more felt. But really just resting in this gratitude. And allowing the body just to be natural. Allowing the breath to be natural. Don't have to control the breath. Don't have to focus on the breath. We can just allow the breath to flow freely. And allowing our minds to just be open and receptive. Just resting, being aware that you're aware in this moment. And just rest with the gratitude, just being natural. Just resting. And now we're going to begin to do a brief body scan, starting from the bottom of our bodies with our feet and go up the body to not covering every part of the body, but just a few parts of the body. So please allow your attention to rest in the experience of your feet. So it may be helpful to connect with the experience of your feet touching the ground to help you actually to make this experience more tangible for you. And as you sense into the feeling of your feet, just notice, is there any tension in my feet in this moment? Just with a gentle, unbiased sensing. Is there tension here? And imagining that you're breathing in the tension. So wherever the tension is, imagining that that's where you're breathing. And as you exhale, just imagine that you're releasing this tension into the earth. Imagine that this tension is melting. Now moving your attention up the body to your knees. Just really sensing, being aware of the experience of your knees. It might be helpful to feel, if you have pants on, to feel the connection between your your pants and your knees to help you to sense the knees, that's fine. And just inquiring into, is there any tension in this area of my knees? And if so, just imagining that you're breathing into this tension, if you can. And with your next exhale, just imagining that this tension is melting down the body, through the legs, into the earth. And now continuing to expand your awareness. So not letting go of the connection and the feeling of our feet and our legs and our knees as we move up to the hips. But the center of our attention is going to be focused on the pelvic region or the hips. We're maintaining this broader sense of sensitivity to our legs as well still. So just placing the attention in the pelvic region, the hips, just sensing, inquiring, is there tension here? And imagining that you're breathing into this area, imagining there's a nostril, maybe your nostrils are there, and inhaling space, inhaling awareness there. And as you exhale, imagining that this tension releases and melts into your chair or to whatever you're sitting on. And then through the chair, it drains into the earth. Then we'll go up the body one more time to our shoulders. So allowing your awareness to now more so include the shoulders. So we're not letting go of the rest of the body, but we're including the feeling of the shoulders in our experience. And it may be helpful to sense the shirt or the top that we're wearing and allowing that contact to help us to experience our shoulders. And feeling any tension that may be there in the shoulders. And if there's tension, imagining that we're breathing into that tension rather than trying to push it away. And as we exhale, we're inviting the tension to melt down our backs and into the chair, the surface that we're sitting on. And the chair or the surface or the ground holds this tension for us. And just bringing a sense, a felt sense of the body as a whole, and just resting for a few moments. And Sará will continue.
And as you continue resting in your awareness, we will move and shift into a practice that I like to call taking off the mask. It may be helpful to you right now to take a couple of deep breaths. And with each deep breath, perhaps settling a little bit more into this state of compassionate witnessing and rest. Now bringing your attention and awareness to the muscles of the face. As you're taking in any tension in the muscles of the face, just taking note of the existence of what may be some stress patterns. See if you can turn towards any feelings of tension with an attitude of friendliness, without turning away from any discomfort or even agitation that could be arising. And just noticing the flow of any thoughts that may be coming to mind. Doing your very best to allow the thoughts to flow without becoming hooked on any one narrative in particular. If you find yourself becoming hooked, gently returning your awareness back to the body and the breath. Indeed, sati, the practice of mindfulness, is about remembrance. Not perfection, but remembrance. And if you were able to tune into this space of gratitude that Rasheed was inviting you into, notice if there is perhaps a particular color or even a set of colors that arises in your imagination. Perhaps these colors are arising from the belly or the heart, the throat, or even the forehead. Wherever the color and sensation of gratitude is arising from, see if you can breathe those colors up to the muscles of the face. And with a natural cadence and rhythm of breath, I'd like to invite you to see if you can make an offering of relaxation to the muscles of the chin, flowing the color of gratitude up through the muscles of the jaw, the cheeks, the muscles of the nose, behind the eyes, continually cascading this color up through the muscles of the forehead. Gently breathing in and out here and noticing how paying this loving attention to the muscles of the face and offering the muscles of the face this rest. What impact does this have on the rest of the body? Perhaps in this place and space we are able to bear witness to what it may mean to practice taking the mask off and meeting with our authentic selves. Oftentimes in the unconscious process of othering, which is a subtle form of aggression which underlies the lie of the separate self which we are collectively healing from. Many of us have been trained to put on a mask of compassion, to cover up the tension and the need for control which can arise in response to uncertainty and impermanence. Can we soften into a place of tenderly receiving of ourselves and who we really are when we practice taking off the mask? Perhaps taking 2 more deep breaths now to round out our practice and behold how it is that we are carrying our bodies. The difference between how it is that we are at rest now compared to what you brought with you to this place. And beginning to very, very gently and slowly open up the eyes without staring at your computer screen quite yet, just allowing colors and textures to wash into your awareness. And if it feels supportive, gradually rotating the head and neck around, taking in the objects and colors that are in the room with you. This is the process of orienting. And as you take in the space that you're in, perhaps feeling into and noticing the presence of safety. So at this point in our time together, which we so appreciate with all of you, and thank you, Rasheed, for opening up that wonderful heart-centered practice for us, we'd like to offer up the chance for you all to share with us about your experience. And this can be your experience of our talk, your experience of the guided practice, or we'd also like to open up a chance for you to ask us questions. And we'll do our absolute best to answer from a place of compassion. Also, if you have questions or things you'd like to say, you can put it in the chat box if you're not particularly keen about coming onto the screen and don't want yourself recorded.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Maddie!
Hi.
Hey, friend, of course.
First of all, thank you so much for this practice. Really enjoying the session. Rasheed, when you were speaking, I really resonated with what you were saying about, or no, wait, Sará. No, it was you who were sharing the story of your friend who is a large, tall Black man. And you were saying that he worked so hard to make himself essentially non-threatening to someone like myself if he were to walk into an elevator with me. And I feel that sometimes. I can feel, I feel especially like some men of color, like I can feel that tension in them. And I want to ask, because you know me, you know that I'm an ally and that I want to do anything I can to to support people and help them feel well. And so like, but in that situation where it's like, I'm a complete stranger to somebody who might be like stepping into the elevator with me, or we're passing on the street or whatever, or, you know, it's like my neighbor who is going for a jog. So like, I will usually go out of my way to like, just look someone in the eye, smile, and say hi. But is there anything else beyond that that I can do to signal to someone like, I'm not a Karen that's like scared of you? That's not a very elegantly asked question, but I hope you'll excuse it.
No, but that's your truth, girlfriend, so you gotta speak it. Sheed, I don't know if you had like an immediate response about this, because the question was being framed around Black men. And I have my own response, but I just wanted to offer it up to you in the space.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, honestly, my response is just be natural, just be like a normal person. You know, like it gets really weird when people start like staring people in the eye and like doing a lot of, you know, weird shit. We're just like, we're human. We see you, you see us. You know, just smile, wave if you feel like it, if you don't, you know, and, you know, you don't really have to make yourself known to be an ally. Just let the vibration be there. Yeah.
Right, right. I would definitely echo that, although I do have to say that there are many places and spaces that I navigate as a Black woman where there is no effort to look me in the eye or say hi. And I talk about this with my homies all the time. We talk about, we frame it as a diaspora moment. Like if I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see another brother or sister, I take the time to be like, hey, I give them a little,
Yep.
what's up? Hey, you're here, I'm here, we're here. Diaspora moment, right? It's kind of like giving dap, boop, for a moment, right? And it's a reaffirmation of our existence in a society that seeks to deny us access to such. Now, I don't particularly expect that from the vast majority of white identified individuals that I encounter, because their survival is not dependent, or it has not been thus far, on having these diaspora moments of affirmation and recognition. The society is built around affirming their presence and supposed superiority. But one reflection that I have for you, Maddie, and I do know you and I do know your heart, and I do know you to be more than an ally, you're an accomplice, girl, is that no matter the degree of our dedication to social justice and dismantling white supremacy in the outer society, the inner work of decolonizing and healing from white supremacy is something that we all have to do. It is constant and it is a lifetime of learning. And so in my perspective, whatever work it is that you are doing, and I always have to rep my homie Resma Menachem's book, My Grandmother's hands down the Bible to me on embodied practice around dismantling internalized white supremacy, no matter what body you are occupying. When we notice our nervous systems going into flight, fight, right, faint, freeze, a trauma response, it's othering, arising in the presence of someone different. That is a gorgeous opportunity to meet that intergenerational trauma with your practice and stay with the discomfort. What is arising for me here and now? What is the lesson? Where is the dharma in this? And then the process of surrendering, because who knows? Who knows what you'll learn from that moment? I see someone in the Irene in the chat. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You're sharing some reflections around the idea or pressure of Black excellence, perfection for validation interplays with the rest and what you deserve, who you observe to deserve rests, and who, how is judged for resting or seen as lazy. Well, dang. Yes. Yes, sister, yes. I don't know. Do you have any reflections on that?
I think this person pretty laid it down. Yeah, I don't really, you know, I think the reflections are right on. Um, yeah, it is an experience that I feel that I have to do my own work of noticing feelings of not doing enough, or resting is an act of being passive and not being someone who's really doing the work. Um, but that's yes, that is a byproduct of whiteness being centered in just expecting us to always be working and moving and doing. But that also is my responsibility of meeting that and learning how to allow that energy to metabolize in my system, so that I can allow myself the time to rest and really sense into my body to know, this is what your spiritual work looks like in this moment, resting.
Yeah. I want to name the time boundary because we did say that this session would be from 2 to 3. However, so for those of you who do need to leave, Caroline, I see you, girl. Thank you. Gratitude to you as well. For those of you who need to leave, we honor that, but Rasheed and I, we had a conversation and we're going to stay for about 10 minutes more, for those of you who would like to continue the conversation. I see that Kevin, you have raised your hand. Is there something you'd like to share? You'll have to unmute yourself though.
There we go. Now you should hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. So I have a couple experiences, a little bit like what Maddie shared. I ride a bus and a Max to get to work, and then have to walk up through a bunch of trails through dark woods and such to get to the tram. I'm sure you know where the tram is at work. So there was one time when there was a Black man somewhere in his 20s that was on the same bus with me. We got off at the same stop and the only two, and I could tell he was tense being around an old white guy walking through the dark woods to get through a parking lot up 2 elevators. It went on and on and on. It's about a 15-minute walk. So I just start chatting with him on the way, and by the time we get indoors, I'm showing him pictures of things on my phone, and we're talking about family and et cetera, et cetera. And it was comfortable, and I didn't expect it, but he turned and shook my hand as we went different directions down the hall.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you are here.
So anyway, the other thing that happened is there's a fellow who walks through town from downtown about salmon. He's a Black man about 70. He carries this like 10-foot long stick that's all decorated and a big stereo system on his shoulder blasting out classical music. He says he walks 10 miles in the morning every day. And I walked about a mile with him and just chatted it up. Yeah, it's going to be my birthday. I'm going across the country on a train. I do that every few months and I'm gone for a month. It's when you engage people and you get past that tension, it starts to get to the point where the tension of everybody involved just drops. And all of a sudden you're in a personal moment, sometimes even a sacred moment. So I don't know if there's a formula to get there. I don't suspect there is, but just being aware of other people and the way they seem to be holding themselves, which might be because of me, or maybe they had a fight with their spouse. I don't really know. It's not my thing, but just trying to be real. Anyway, that's the only comment that I had.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. Yeah, I do agree that it is very important to develop awareness around our relational space. And there are a lot of people who don't necessarily feel inclined to traverse that, you know, in the effort to create intimacy and trust. So I really appreciate, and also you brought in the element of the sacred, which I think is very, very important, you know, that we can come together and have moments where it's like we go to church, you know, boom. I would really love to,
You mentioned the sacred again. So I think the sacred's always there. It's just a question as to whether we reach for it and whether we can put down our guard or take off our glasses and see it in the other person right where they're at. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's spontaneous and you don't even have to work at it. And sometimes you really have to dig and get yourself out of the way.
Yeah, I agree. Fabiola, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. I was noticing, so I have a 6-year-old son, and he's Black and Latinx, and so right now it's been a really intense time of thinking about how do I talk to him about police violence, how do I talk to him about like how he might be perceived in the world as he kind of you know, in those situations that the last two folks shared. What's disheartening to me is who has power in those situations, and it seems like a lot of that is in like white folks kind of creating a sense of like, oh, this is a safe space, I'm not going to hurt you. And I think that as I think about like how I do this for myself and how I help my son create a sense of safety in and of ourselves, and you know, like in those situations maybe there's some like anxiety that comes up, or like the sense of like I don't want to do the wrong thing because I don't want to be perceived in a certain way. And I'm wondering both as like training young Black and brown children and youth, and also in our own work, in those moments where those feelings of I'm not sure if the other person is going to feel safe around me, like what are some like what recommendations do you have in those moments in particular to ease like that tension or that anxiety that comes up in your body?
Rasheed, I feel like I've already been responding so much. So.
Can you take the last part of your question again? Just so I can.
Yeah, I was wondering, like as I try, and right now, so I'm really struggling with how much to explain to my 6-year-old around the lack of safety that exists like in the world around police, or around you know, in certain white spaces that might not be safe for him or for me in different ways. And so he's already expressing a lot of like of situations where he's like mommy, I don't feel safe, or I don't feel like, he's expressing a lot of those feelings that come up just from like the narratives I think that he's trying to process. And so when we're in situations in public, when maybe some of that stress or anxiety is coming up, and as I teach him to walk through the world, to pay attention to how his body is reacting to different tensions, I'm wondering if there's recommendations for in those like moments of potential tension where other folks may not be easing that for him or for us, if there are certain things that like practices to pass down to kind of cue your body of like, I don't know, like I don't want him or me to walk through the world with like a constant like trauma response, but it seems like a lot of times we carry that burden. And so I don't know, like sometimes I get stuck with my son or talking to young people, what basic skills so that we can ease that trauma response that might be triggered in situations where we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. Well, first I would just say, thank you for, putting the effort in to teach your son about being sensitive to what your body is doing in the present moment. When you're feeling unsafe, I think that's step one. Really just, teaching your son to feel and just feel and feel more and continue to feel. Don't stop feeling. And helping your son to know that it's okay to, whatever the internal felt experience is in the moment, it's okay for him to have that. But just on like an external level, one of the first things that I think about is helping your son to identify, if there is possible to actually get out of the space that doesn't feel safe, if that's possible. And if that's not possible, finding a way to connect to someone in the space that actually makes them feel safe, so he may not feel alone or by himself. Or if he has his phone, text someone to just have communication going, or call someone. Those are the things that come up for me outside of course, the internal work that you're already doing with him. But I always think about my physical safety, helping him to be able to see places in his space that he can connect to help regulate a little bit, whether it's a friend, a colleague, or a teacher, or something like that. And then maybe using the phone to just create a more sense of connection when he's feeling really isolated. Sarah, I don't know if you have any.
No, I thought that was an absolutely beautiful question, a beautiful response. And I know that, and I'd also like to mention that Rasheed has to take the time to get ready. He's going to be leading a drop-in meditation practice through his community, Heart Refuge. And that's going to be happening at 3:30 Pacific time, so in about less than...
It's 3:45 actually.
Was it 3:45? My bad. Yes, and so I definitely want to stick a little bit to our time boundary, but this is a practice place and space, BIPOC, for those of you who maybe want to engage in a little bit more practice after this. And yeah, and I think that we will go ahead and wrap it up here. But I just also wanted to say before I turn it over to Alyssa that Sheed and I have been really discussing how there's just no way in the span of an hour or so to really dig into this material. And so we will be exploring ways that this can potentially be a series where we continue both the verbal practice and the embodied exploration of this as a community together. And we would love to invite you all to look out for that in the future. And just so much love and gratitude for every single one of you for showing up in this space with us together today.
Deep gratitude as well. Thank you, everyone. Peace to you all.
Thank you, Rasheed. Thank you, Sarah. I just have a couple of announcements. Thank you to all of you again for joining us here today. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. So June 19th is honoring the day that slavery ended in 1865. And Sarah will be a guest speaker through a platform called Sangha Live, 8 to 9 a.m. PST, bright and early tomorrow morning. She will be there, I will be there. And that one's also donation-based. And then these webinars are, like I said, every Thursday. We have Michelle Johnson, Latifa Till, Lanisha Duke, and Rasheed and Sarah. I really think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people. I would love to have you back again, and today's session was amazing. So thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you for joining with us. Be well.